Good morning, beautiful souls. Welcome to another video. Today is really going to be kind of me talking about spirituality, my journey with spirituality, what I've learned over the past few years. The number one thing is that spirituality is a personal journey. It is a personal process. If there's anything I've learned over the past 2-3 years is that you have to do what feels right for you, right? There are people who consider themselves spiritual, who might still dabble in religion, who might still, go to church or go to temple, or kind of attach different pieces of different beliefs into something coherent for them. And that is really the key part of spirituality. It's not necessarily just about the practices, right? And even with the practices, that is a personal choice. Whether you choose to pray to God, whether you choose to speak to your higher self, speak to the universe, all of the above, work with a god or deity, practice witchcraft, practice, again, religion, like all of these things accumulate together into your personal journey. So I personally have gone through a few different spiritual awakenings, spiritual journeys, and I found myself dabbling in witchcraft, which I still do occasionally, but I wouldn't say that I practice normally. I don't practice rituals. I go as I'm guided, and that's one of the biggest things as well, listening to your intuition. I've spoken about on this channel how in the beginning of 2023, I was in church actually for the last time, and while the sermon was going, it was like I was having this internal dialogue, kind of, and I just heard the words, learn about yourself this year. And the place where I was mentally and spiritually, I guess, at the time, I really thought of it more on a surface level. I was like, okay, the trend of like dating yourself was very popular then, and I was like, okay, I have to go on these solo dates for myself. I was still very much externalizing my experience and who I was, and it was dependent on how other people would receive me. So it was very dependent on, what my parents would think of me. It was very dependent on, a prospective significant other. All these things were very external. But as the course of the year went on, it became more about kind of figuring out what I believed. So I would say 2023 was a lot about challenging my beliefs. So I grew up mainly, for many years at least, mostly my teenage life, but also, like, I would say the beginning of my life was more like Christian, but it wasn't so strict. And then, it was more introduced a lot more in my teenage years because of the profession of my stepfather. And so you can say I grew up Christian, right? With that, there were often times along the way where there were just things that didn't sit right with me, or things that I didn't completely agree with, both from in terms of like my parents' perspectives on things or people. And it really challenged my like it brought me into a sense of cognitive dissonance, because it was like there are things in the Bible that I agree with and I understand. There are things about Jesus as a spiritual teacher that I resonate with, but other things just don't quite feel right to me. The level of division that there seemed to be between us versus them, saints versus sinners, angels versus demons, good versus evil, it just felt too separated and too divided for my liking. Things that didn't feel like they were issues to me personally were like charged, things like gender, things like well, sexuality, I should say, sexual orientation, you know, the views of other religions. And I've just had this perspective, I'm going to say, throughout my life of just inclusivity, perhaps in a way that I wasn't even really aware of. And so, you know, going into this energy of Christianity where it didn't quite feel as inclusive as what felt right inside, it just, after I moved out from home, I just found myself completely lose interest with Christianity, and it just became a realization that it was strictly performative for me. I still prayed, you know, if I felt guided to, I would read certain passages, or things would still come up in my mind and upon my heart. But I didn't feel the need to focus on one book. I didn't feel the need to, you know, be ritualistic with going to church. And at first, I was challenging that because it felt like, oh my God, I'm a bad Christian, right? But throughout 2023, I would say in like April, May of 2023, I had this very critical moment where I'd made the decision to look up or, you know, dive into any belief that felt right, that came up for me. And one of the things was things like African spirituality, kind of like Egyptian spirituality, Kemetic teachings, witchcraft, tarot, and there were things that came and went. You know, tarot was one of the things I still do, I still practice. I use it as a divination tool, but it's more of a clarification for me, because I find that with my relationship with my higher self, with spirit, I tend to get downloads at random times throughout the day, throughout the week, and things are just constantly flowing into my level of understanding. So it's like I'm never quite in a space where I feel completely blocked until it comes to a point where something major is about to happen and I find myself facing fear and doubt, and that's really the point where I begin to depend on the cards. And it's like this realization, this awareness that I know that the only reason I'm seeking this clarification is because of that doubt, because of that fear, which are lower vibration and which are blocking me from creating the reality I want, blocking me from seeing that it's going to be perfectly fine. And I'm fully aware of that. But sometimes, you know, we just get to that point where it's like I don't really feel completely sure. Anyway, so I think the biggest part of my spiritual awakening was challenging my belief system and allowing myself to explore more ranges and realms of belief. And I will never say I'm done exploring. One thing about me, I believe in lifelong learning. I believe in constantly expanding. And at the time when I came to this like realization that I wanted to explore more things, even if they were taught to me as demonic or evil, I really just allowed myself to be completely open to these different topics, these different ideas. And if it felt wrong, then my decision was going to be to just go back to Christianity. But lo and behold, the more I explored, yeah, there were things that resonated and there were things that didn't. There were parts of African spirituality, for example, that I resonated with, but I don't feel as connected to that in this present incarnation, in this present reality, to lean on it, you know, to dive into it fully as my religion or my belief, right? In terms of witchcraft, there's definitely different forms of witchcraft. I definitely resonate with like kitchen witchcraft. I did a lot of baking during that time, and was trying to be very intentional with the practices that I did. I had an altar at the time. It was a very beautiful place for me in terms of that. It just felt like I had something physical to come to. And again, not to say that I'm not going to have that again, but since moving in here, for one, I don't really have many things to create that, but it's almost also that my entire space is my altar, as opposed to just having one physical thing. Again, tarot, oracle cards, I really dived deep into it a lot last year. This year, I find myself trusting more in what I'm receiving, and I don't find myself using it as much. You will have noticed that I don't really do a lot of readings anymore, if at all. Not to say that I won't in the future, but right now I just don't feel connected to it in that way. And I'm okay with that. Another major lesson, even over this year, has been learning to flow, learning to just allow things to happen, allow things to come through. And along with listening to my intuition, a lot of the major things that have happened in my life in the past 7-8 months has been because I've listened to my intuition. So at a time where I started feeling restless, I started feeling very uncomfortable with being at the workplace that I was, not because of the people, it just didn't feel right anymore. And I did the natural next step that I normally do in each job that I've been in, and that is to promote, to move up a level. And normally that's when it's like, okay, I feel better, and I can learn, I can grow more, and do that until I feel that discomfort again. But in this case, moving up only made me feel more uncomfortable. And there was really this realization that it was like, okay, it's not so much about moving up in a physical level anymore. It's about leaving. And in that time, that was the major trigger that was happening. It was like I was being told it was time to leave, but I kept pushing it off because I was scared. I've never been in that space where I didn't have any job. I've been rotating between having 2 jobs and then 1 job and then 2 jobs again. And it was like, what am I going to do without a source of income? What am I going to do, without a place to stay? But it was like, I will just backtrack a little bit. At the beginning of 2023, I had this awareness that I was going to move to Arizona and that I was going to be traveling. Now, at the level of understanding I was, because of my current situation then, I thought it was going to be like me traveling full time. And even when I left my job in November of last year, that's again the idea that I had. But as I traveled in literally about 2 weeks from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. And a lot of different miracles happened along that path where I didn't have enough money, or a credit card that was overcharged shouldn't have worked, but it did multiple times for me to get gas and keep going. I came to Sedona. I had the opportunity to meet different people and to just feel the peace and the energy. It was really about resting. November, December was really about resting. Even January, it was almost like the past 4 years of just working was being deprogrammed from my mind and my energy field. And then in January, I started traveling again. I went to California, came back. It was stressful at times because there was a lot of unknowns. Again, a lot of unknowns about money. I was doing Instacart, and that entire energy, that entire time was about healing. And I wasn't really even fully aware of it. And now, being where I am now, I look over even the past few months, and it was about healing. It was about ego death. It was about challenging my ideas about my relationships with my family, forgiving, releasing a lot, shedding a lot of things. And then even coming into an awareness of what do I want? And that was something that came through a lot. And because I was living in my car, I didn't have the space to necessarily do things like yoga or, have an altar. Like it was very much limited. And so my one major thing was just to kind of sit and allow things to come through. I also used my cards then, but it was more about learning to just tune in to my higher self and being just so much more in tune with the voices of my guides and self, truly, and just being so much more receptive and attuned to that, so that when those instructions would come through, I was very much clear on it. It wasn't doubt, there wasn't hesitation, because I just knew what it was, right? It was almost like I had to go into hermit mode so that all the world was quiet for me, so that I could listen to myself. And even one of my first instructions, yes, I traveled across the United States, but my first instruction was to go to West Virginia, to this beautiful campground. First of all, I didn't know where I was gonna go. I just traveled to West Virginia, and then I started looking for campgrounds. Found one. It was absolutely beautiful. I bought a tent. I set up my tent. It was freezing cold. So, and there was like no phone service. So again, where I was right then and there, and not having a whole lot of like outerwear, I didn't stay for too long. I think I stayed for like 2 days. But looking back on it, it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I definitely want to go there again someday. And thinking back even today, I was like, if I had stayed there, like if I was there now, I'd probably just be completely at peace, because there was this beautiful flowing river. It was just so quiet and still and absolutely peaceful. And I believe that in a way I was probably meant to stay there for a lot longer than I did. But because I was so attached to this idea of creating content and needing to upload videos and all these things, which you can see some of the videos I made on my other channel, Travel with Nay. I didn't stay, because I was like, oh, I need to be connected to people. I need to let people know where I am. I need to be filming and uploading and all this stuff. So yeah, I think the past few months was really about ego death, but also attunement. And now, here I am. I spoke about this in my other video, but I have an apartment, full-time job. Within like 2-3 weeks, I became a department manager at my new job. And now I'm going back to school on my own terms, using my own information, my own data. I don't have to depend on my parents' financial information or personal information. It's just this like beautiful divine timing of 2 years ago, I stopped going to school because of personal reasons. And now 2 years later, and just the exact perfect timing, I'm about to turn 24, but also they've made changes to the FAFSA, and I can actually apply as an individual adult, not requiring my parental information, and which is perfect because I don't talk to them, right? So, even with the school that I've chosen, I now know that I want to study holistic nutrition. The program that I was guided to is so beautifully comprehensive in so many different ranges of holistic health. So I can study so much more of what I love and what I want to know. And for the first few semesters, it's covered, and I can finish it in about a year and a half. And I'm doing it by myself. I'm in my own apartment again, but I'm in my own apartment in a completely different state where I don't know anyone, besides the people that I work with and the friends that I have here. And I have a cat, and it's like my life is finally unfolding in a way where it feels like it's mine. And it's all because I've listened to my intuition. Like, there have definitely been times along the journey where I felt like each place that I was the permanent. But there's always been this sense of like, this is not the end. Even when it was at the lowest, it was like, this is not the end. And even if it is, I'm happy, because I was able to step out and do what I wanted to do. And yes, I was afraid. Yes, I was scared, but I did it anyway. And it was because I listened to my intuition. that first step of going to West Virginia. Significant. It was a beautiful journey. Honestly, it was such a beautiful journey, and I can think back and remember different points in different states and just like be so happy that I did that. And then I received the instruction in March to go to Washington. That in itself was such an intense journey. I had to stop like every few hundred miles to do Instacart so I could get money for it, but I kept pushing forward. I went there thinking there was some grand end destination, that Washington was gonna be the end for me, and I got there, got all the way into Idaho, came back, and immediately wanted to go back. And it was like, on the surface then, it was like, okay, universe, what's the point of telling me to come all the way out here? Is there something I'm missing? Is there someone I'm supposed to meet? Is there somewhere I'm supposed to go? And it was kind of just radio silence. But at the same time, I knew immediately when it was time for me to go home. And yes, I just made this thousands of miles journey to all the way there just to want to turn around and come back. But the things that came up for me during that time about my idea of home, my idea of family, what I really wanted was being challenged. And even when I came back, I still thought I wanted a van, and eventually I want a home, and maybe I want a business, and all these different things that at some point could be true. But it was about really challenging a lot of beliefs and ideas. And then different things have happened since then that in the moment felt terrible, but as I look back, it's like all of it was orchestrating steps for me to get exactly where I am right now. Something as simple as applying to an apartment that I didn't have the money for, didn't have the resources, or according to natural things like my credit score, I shouldn't be able to rent my own apartment by myself. But the universe literally connected me and aligned me with a woman who was willing to go above and beyond even what I expected, but like able to help me out. And yeah, it's just, you just have to be absolutely open to receiving anything. Like, one of my major revelations this year alone was that I don't have to orchestrate everything. Like, yes, vision boards are great, having a plan, having a goal is great, but one of the biggest things for me this entire past 6-7 months has been surrender, and literally telling the universe, do whatever you want to do. Be as creative as you want to be in giving me exactly what I desire. And it's also this parallel of realizing that the universe is also you. You are source consciousness. You are creating your reality. And it's this weird sense of like inception, where it's like, I'm asking the universe for this, but in reality, I'm really asking myself for this. And am I open and willing enough to allow this thing into my life? Am I aware enough to be receptive to this thing coming into my life? Or am I blocking myself? And another really critical part of my journey has really been each point of the way asking myself, or asking my higher self, your guides, whatever, however, if you want to externalize or internalize, but either way, it's coming from yourself, right? But like asking, what do I need to work on? What needs to be revealed to me? What needs to be, what do I need to process and think through? And just allowing those things to come through. Even right now, I'll just share this little bit with you before I go. Right now, I'm challenging my beliefs and thoughts around my own sexuality, not gender, but sexuality, sexual orientation, preferences, how I view myself, who I want to be to the world, having kind of masculine features in terms of like broad shoulders, like very, like very muscular, but also very like curvy and thick. And it's like realizing I don't necessarily have to be one thing just because I look a certain way, right? I had my hair grown out and it just felt so weird to me, and I cut it. I shaved it, and I was self-conscious about it at first because I went into work, but everyone just complimenting me. It was like, are y'all just like being nice or whatever? But the more I wear it, the more confident I feel. Also changing my jewelry to gold, wanting to pierce different places and feeling okay with that, feeling comfortable with that, wanting to wear certain clothes, not because of quote unquote the male gaze or the female gaze, but just because of what makes me comfortable. Really challenging a lot of things that were kind of put onto me in terms of growing up and having certain expectations, but also challenging even what I believe to be true for myself. Like, I used to dress a certain way in terms of like collared shirts and really kind of preppy style because I like the style. But even now, just realizing that I am allowed to evolve as a person. My ideas, my personality, my tendencies are allowed to evolve. And, you know, I might want my hair to be one color one day, 1 week, 1 month, whatever, and something else another month, and that's okay. I might decide that I like men one one part of my life, and then decide no, I actually like women, or I like both, and it's like there's no problem with that because this spiritual journey is my own. This is my spirit incarnating time and time again to learn different things, not merely lessons, but to learn more about myself, learn more about what it is to be human. And I'm sure past incarnations of myself has made many mistakes. I'm sure past incarnations of myself have done terrible things. I'm sure, but each experience is kind of accumulating into source consciousness. And, each incarnation allows me to experience more and more. And I think one of the biggest things I've realized in this incarnation is that I'm allowed to explore as much as I need to or want to in order to create that identity of who I am in this incarnation. And it doesn't simply lie on the surface and what I was speaking about in terms of like presentation and things like that, but who I am as a spirit, who I am, as source. Things like, okay, what do I want my diet to look like? I've tried veganism, I liked it, but I also want to see what the other part of that is, going back to quote unquote a regular diet, but seeing how it feels for my body. If I find that eating meat feels difficult for me or feels gross for me, then I'll go back to veganism, right? Kind of the same thing I was talking about Christianity, but just allowing myself to be fluid. And I really realize that that is my personal purpose on this earth in this time, is to explore, because as I learn and as I question all these things and challenge these things, I'm able to bring these ideas and these questions to you so that you can ask yourself that, right? Exploring things like, am I meant to be alone in this incarnation? Am I meant to just be singular? I'm a master number 11, so with the two energies of that, it leans in kind of the one energy and the two energy, and it's like realizing points in my life where I've kind of flowed between both of them, but also realizing at heart I thrive in the one energy. Yes, I, love having friendships and relationships, but I thrive in oneness because this is a point where I can just attune with, again, my higher self, and I can get downloads and I can learn. And sure, at some point there may be a spiritual partner for me, or they may not, and I'm okay with that. Realizing that a major part of my purpose is to learn, is to, maybe not in the formal education sense, even though I am going to school. It's so exciting to be able to say that, honestly. I'm so excited about that, but I already feel the kind of next steps. So with the workplace that I'm at, I know that it serves a purpose both in creating the lifestyle that I'm creating for myself right now. It has kind of perpetuated or instigated that, in that, I eat all organic foods. It's I'm surrounded by health, I'm surrounded by spirituality, so it just makes sense. It has served its purpose in starting many things for me in terms of lifestyle, in terms of me wanting to study nutrition, in terms of me looking for programs and stuff to study, but also recognizing pretty much from the beginning that it would be temporary. Because when I first started there, it felt like, in my head, I was like, am I really just going back to the old system that I left, because I really thought that I wasn't gonna be in this system ever again, that I was gonna be working for myself. And it's like Spirit had to remind me that this is just temporary. It serves a purpose. It's a means to an end. The money that I'm earning from here serves a purpose. The money, the things that I'm acquiring serve a purpose. Even if it's for me to be more grounded, because living in my car the past few months, as much as I've released a lot and I'm realized that I'm content with having the bare minimum, I also thrive. Like I'm like kind of like a slime or an amoeba, that I flow with the container that I'm in. So when I moved into my car, I had to let go of like 90% of what I owned, and I was okay with it. And now I'm in this space, I'm acquiring more and more things, but they're things that, as it comes up for me, it makes sense or it serves a purpose, whether it's aesthetic, whether it's in like terms of jewelry and like how I present myself, and that's perfectly okay. But yeah, I shrink or expand or adapt to whatever situation, whatever container I'm in. And again, that's just what I, as myself, am meant to do in this life. I've been in the lows, I've been in the highs, I've been in religion, I've been in spirituality. I live in duality, and it allows me to respect the perspectives of many different people. It allows me to respond to any situation or any person that I interact with. It allows me to have conversations with people from all walks of life. It allows me to be aware and empathetic to the energies that are around me. It allows me to, grow psychically. It allows, like, all of these things, and I can relate to many different people in many different ways because I don't allow myself to be closed-minded. But if I had to boil down, my entire existence in this incarnation is about open-mindedness, constantly learning, constantly expanding, constantly evolving, adapting, ascending, for the sake of bringing many people together, many beliefs together, many ideas together. I've been kind of shirking around this concept of being like a guru or a teacher, because it feels kind of icky to me in terms of, the mainstream that we know right now. And I never want to put myself on that kind of pedestal where it's like, oh, I know all these things. I will be the first to say I don't know everything, and I'm okay with that. But I'm constantly allowing myself to learn more, right? To know more. And I do think that on a spiritual level, at some point in this incarnation, I'm meant to teach, not in like a religious or a cultish way, but just to share. And if you listen to This Is Maria, like in the next century, I believe we're really going to see like this major shift. We've been saying the shift into the 5D, we're already there. It's just a consciousness thing, right? This idea of, the second coming of Christ. The second coming of Christ is Christ consciousness. It is the, the consciousness that is elevating in the earth right now. And it's not necessarily tied to one man, but it is literally the ascension of the souls on this earth into a new mind plane, into an energy field where, we are one with spirit again. It's not all lower chakra energy. And you see, personally, I know like my algorithms are going to be curated to me, but just seeing how many more people are more in tune with being self-taught, allowing things like I said, I dabble in things like witchcraft, herbalism, all these different things, but it's only as it comes from source, as it comes from spirit. I will literally ask my higher self, my guides, what solution or what concoction can I make to heal this burn, or to help this, or what food should I eat, and I'll get downloads and it'll be exactly what I need. So allowing yourself to come back into attunement with the source is probably the most important part of spirituality. Not being so tied down by things like money, things like, this world system. Again, I've been in a space where I had no money, and yes, I was able to do Instacart, but being at the bare minimum, just realizing that even things like having millions of dollars or having thousands of dollars saved, for me, just realizing I don't even need that to be happy. I don't need that to be, there, again, impossible times where I did not have anything, to now where things so silly as like being able to decide how much gas I want to get, versus like, okay, I have to do this many orders in order to get gas. Being able to say, oh, I'm gonna buy XYZ, or I'm gonna buy all these things, these foods, that a few months ago it was this or that, like just learning to be content in whatever space or whatever situation you're in, but also allowing the opportunity for more to come in. Recognizing that money is a means to an end, recognizing that class systems and all these different things are just material. They're low vibration things that they keep you grounded, but they're not all that there is. There's so much more. And I think for me, the real struggle of the past few months was learning to allow those two things to coexist, because sometimes when you come into spirituality, it feels like you have to be all in the spiritual, like it's only crown chakra and that's all there is, but you have to remain grounded. And that was also the duality that I had, the balancing of the scales that I really had to go through the past few months. It was like finding that space where I wasn't so much in the lower chakras of like being stressed and upset about money, feeling stressed and upset about my situation, all these things, but also being in tune spiritually. And even now I still have to rebalance those scales every once in a while. you know, being at work sometimes, I'll get so overwhelmed by like all the things I have to do. And then there'll be this eerie silence where there's still people in the store, but there's just like a silence, and I'll feel it. I literally feel it, and it's just like immediate calm, immediate silence. Right now, today, again, intuitively, I got this download to look up silent yoga, and as I'm typing, I'm like, is that even a thing? Like, is anyone gonna even have that? And lo and behold, I found a channel that all she does is, you know, just give you one quick cue about what position you're about to take, and that's it. And it was just mostly quiet. She had nature sounds in the background, and it was just so peaceful, just doing yoga. Like, I know meditation is kind of something that's preached as this core spiritual practice, but again, it's a personal journey. I do it as I'm guided. I don't do it every single day. Sometimes I will have that pull or that call to just sit in silence or listen to music, and sometimes, you know what, I'm not gonna lie, I don't fully listen sometimes, or I might just sit there for like a minute or two and then immediately go back to what I was doing. And sometimes, you know, that's all it takes. But other times, like, I might need to be moving, but as long as it's quiet and still, my mind can still flow. And so doing that silent yoga this morning, I was like, I got the idea to do this video, but it was like just silence. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna be my practice. To say I'm gonna do it every day, unfortunately, that just doesn't flow with me. Depending on the days that or the times that I work each day, and sometimes I just want to stay in bed, and I do. And, you know, this being my first day off, this is the first day that I'm being still and just being in silence for a little bit. And I'm not ashamed to say, like, I don't always focus on spiritual things or spiritual things. I don't always listen to spiritual videos. I don't always, when I do listen to those videos, like astrological movements and people that I greatly respect and stuff, I don't always listen to the whole video. Sometimes I get distracted. Sometimes I get like fidgety and just start scrolling and looking through different things. And again, that's okay. Like, I'm not gonna judge myself so harshly, like, oh my god, I'm not super spiritual. Like, I know how things flow for me. I know how things work for me. I know that I get spiritual downloads every day at any time of the day in the most random moments. I literally, and again, it's just about being open. Like, I had this amazing conversation with this gentleman at the store yesterday, and you know, I'm a vitamins manager, so I'm like putting all these vitamins in a box so I can carry them around and stock it. And he just was like, how do you do that? And I'm just like, huh? I just do it every day. But he was talking about the aspect of like having all those labels. For him, he was dyslexic, so that is overstimulating and too much for him, and he's not able to fully process, you know, what each of those things might say. Or he said he doesn't really read because it's difficult for him. But as the conversation went on, he revealed that he's an architect, and you know, he's able to solve problems spatially, and he's able to solve problems that other people can't solve, and he can see certain things in certain ways. And towards the end of the conversation, I just had to tell him, like, just because you're not able to read does not discredit you from contributing, right? Like, you simply have an expertise and you know, you're just needed elsewhere. And he was like, you know what, thank you so much for saying that. But I'm like, yeah, I feel like we underestimate ourselves so much for our flaws, or what the Western world might consider, you know, mental disorders or all these things. And, you know, of course there are people who might need to take medication to manage it, or, you know, a lot of, there's two conflicting sides when it comes to things like that, because there are people who simply cannot function without medication, and that's okay. Like, it's not about bashing on, you know, if whether or not people are using their spiritual gifts in a spiritual way, whether or not people are in tune. Like, regardless of all that, just don't allow others or yourself to discredit yourself or put yourself out of the equation simply because you're not qualified in one way or another. I am not qualified on paper. Well, I am, but there are many positions I've had where I'm not qualified. I'm always the youngest in every management position I've taken because I just go for it. It's like, what's the worst that could happen? And for my first job, that has been how it is. And it was always this idea of like, it scares me. I don't know how to do it, but I'll learn. And if they accept me, or if they, you know, allow me to have it, then I'll thrive. And guess what? I normally do, because I don't allow societal expectations or age or whatever to hold me back. I don't allow, you know, if I want something, if I feel like I'm meant to go after something, I go after it. And again, the past few months has really solidified for that for me even more. Just like trusting in the universe, surrendering, and just allowing things to happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world, you know? Okay, I've been rambling for way too long now. So I will let you guys go. I hope you have an amazing day, amazing week. I will be back whenever I feel guided to post another video. So thank you for joining me. Bye.